With the recent struggles here with the Major League Baseball team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, the eyes of Pirates fans have once again turned to Indianapolis. With that being said, bringing back Jack McMullen at Jack underscore McMullen 11 at Indianapolis Indians at Just Baseball Media. Jack, how you doing today, brother?
I'm living the dream, man. You say the struggles at the big league level. If I'm not mistaken, they put together a little winning streak on Friday and Saturday, right?
They
Two in a
they
row.
did,
Not
yeah,
considered
but
a
then
streak?
yeah, but recency bias, Jack. You know they got blown out on Sunday, so it's
Yeah,
like
fair,
those games didn't even happen. And
man.
Jake Woodford has one bad outing, and now he's garbage. So I mean that's how it's recency bias, man. That's all it
That
is.
that 10 game stretch was so long ago. I can hardly remember that. All I remember is the weekend series win over the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is I remember it because man, that was painful. But as I've said, the eyes are turning once again to Indianapolis, and of course, the little bit of a teaser because you know how people look at Twitter or X, they look at like, okay, the Pirates are calling up and they see Billy, they assume Billy Cook. Pirates fans completely forgot about Billy McKinney. Like I said before we hopped on here, was talking to you, I was like, do people not remember his spring training, his 2 home runs, the 192 WRC plus,
Yeah.
359, 490, 549, and people were calling for him to at least get a shot
Yeah.
at the major league team out of spring training. But Billy McKinney, he kind of like went away, but I know he was injured for about 2 months there.
Yeah.
So talk about what Billy's been doing since he's been back up, and that's Billy McKinney, everybody.
Yeah, he's been balling out, man. Both Billies have been balling out, and Billy Cook has been awesome and a great guy to get to know. Both the new guys, Yorke and Cook, are great guys. So that kind of feeds into the Pirate Jam and all that. But Billy McKinney, it was interesting. It was a broken thumb. He was wearing a cast for about a month and a half here. Then he got the cast off, went to Greensboro, was on rehab, came back, and this guy really didn't skip a beat. 40 games at 850 OPS, 845, 850 OPS. So, I mean, this guy's been playing pretty darn well. He's been in both corner outfield spots. He's filled in at first base a little bit and looked like this guy's going to walk. He's hitting about 295. He's got an OBP around 395. He's going to walk. He's going to hit the ball out of the ballpark, sporadically. And, he doesn't do it as often as I think a lot of people were hoping when he was, at one point a fringe top 100 prospect, when he was part of a couple of those big deals. I know he was part of that Aroldis Chapman deal in 2016 that sent him from the Cubs to the Yankees. It was Gleyber Torres and Billy McKinney for the most part for Aroldis Chapman at the 16 deadline. But this guy's been around. He's got ample big league experience. And, I just think you run into the issue when you watch a team every day, and now we're at 115, 120 games at this point. You're watching these Pirates play, you start to poke a hole in every single guy. You just want something new and fresh in there. And I think he's going to provide something new and fresh.
Yeah, and like you talk about, like the injury, I look at his numbers. He's got about 51 plate appearances back up in Indy after that rehab start. He's hitting well, 168 WRC plus, 3 home runs. Like you said, and he is what Pirates fans may be looking for is I believe he's a major league defender. We've seen a lot of mistakes in the outfield as Pirates fans. Unfortunately, G1 Bay can make the acrobatic play, but then can also take the horrible route to the ball at times.
Yeah.
Brian De La Cruz, who they acquired at the trade deadline, we all knew he wasn't that great of a defender.
Yeah.
So there's those times when you're losing these one-run ball games. Obviously, that wasn't the case yesterday.
Right.
But, those little mistakes. So you will get a major league caliber outfielder.
It's a tough situation, man, because you look at Arizona and it's like, wow, I want that. Where you have Alec Thomas in center, Corbin Carroll in left, and Jake McCarthy at right. And it's, wow, I'm running 3 center fielders out there. They're going to cover so much real estate. It's a fine line. And the beauty is Carroll can really hit. And I think McCarthy can hit. And I think Alec Thomas is going to grow into his offensive profile in Arizona. With the Pirates, you have an all-star bat in Brian Reynolds. Problem is, like, he's just not DHing all the time because you have McCutchen to do that. Although, now that McCutchen is the DH, I would assume Reynolds gets a couple more, or now that McCutchen's on the shelf, pardon, I would assume Reynolds gets a couple more, days off of his feet in the outfield. Let's not pretend that Brian Reynolds is a good defensive outfielder. He's a really good hitter. He is an all-star hitter, but he is holding down left field when he is a below-average defender at the major league level. You go and trade for Brian De La Cruz. Brian De La Cruz is one of the leading home run hitters among National League outfielders this year. Let's not pretend that he's a good defender. Like, you've got 2 corner outfielders that are your quote-unquote everyday guys, one of which you just traded for a month ago or 2 weeks ago, that are below average defenders. So you either need an elite center fielder or you need to get Reynolds to the DH spot every now and again, and you need to plug in an average corner defender. And I think that's what Billy McKinney is.
Yeah, and that's what he will provide. But I mean, going to the other guys, because everybody is saying, with Yorke and with Cook, both of them need to be added to the 40-man roster this year if you want to protect them from the major league portion of, the Rule 5 draft. Yeah. But then I also look back, and this is something that popped into my head this morning when I was prepping for this show, is that, I mean, we saw Jared Triolo last year. And we saw how well he performed pretty much beginning at this point in time during the season. Yeah. And it hasn't translated into the full season. So my thinking is, if Yorke comes up and performs, and if Billy Cook comes up and performs, I mean, people are saying, well, that will show you what you have for next year. In my eyes, I mean, it kind of could get their feet wet. But it is like really a month and a half of games going to show you, oh, now we have an answer at second base, or we have an answer in left field or center field, because they have, the Indians have Yorke playing and Cook both playing in center field a little bit. So, I mean, that's why I'm trying to just have this debate, and maybe internally with myself and with you now. And right now, I mean, Billy Cook, 50 plate appearances for the Indians. Nick Yorke, 67 plate appearances. I mean, it's extremely small sample size.
It's really small. I will also say a lot of people remember Evan Carter with the Texas Rangers last year. Evan Carter came up. Now, he was a top 10 prospect in all of baseball. Billy Cook and Nick Yorke are outside the top 100, pretty much consensus. But Yorke is close. Evan Carter last year in 23 major league games in the regular season had a 1058 OPS. This guy was one of the better hitters in baseball for the final month of the season. Postseason, he's amazing. Then to start this year, he's got a 633 OPS. I just pulled it up to confirm. 633, hasn't played since the end of May, dealing with injury. But like, that just kind of goes to show you that baseball and progression is nonlinear. And, you can't assume if Yorke comes up, hits 290 with a 900 OPS, that he's going to be that in 2025. You just cannot assume that, because, and the thing that I've kind of settled on all year is the difference between AAA baseball and Major League Baseball has never been this different. There is such a stark contrast where pitchers, execution is sort of kind of there, but I'd say the baseline pitcher at AAA is, I don't want to be mean and say half the pitcher that a big league average pitcher is, but that's kind of what it feels like. The league average OPS in AAA baseball is 771 at last time I checked. And we're looking at a 715 in the big leagues. And that was near 700 around the All-Star break. So, there's a huge difference between quality of pitching in AAA and the big leagues. I wouldn't just assume because Nick Yorke has a 950 OPS that he's going to get up, have a 900 in the big leagues. And then if he does that, he's going to have a 910 next year. That's just not how baseball works.
It's definitely, and like I said, I think a part of this is also recency bias. I think it's also the 10-game losing streak. I think it's wanting to inject a little bit of a spark plug type player like Nick Gonzalez was when he first came up.
Yeah.
Him and Skeens coming up at the same time, and it looked like, he was clicking, but then Gonzalez kind of took a step back over his like last month of the season. But injured now. And I think people want to find that answer at each position. They want to go into next year with an answer. And like I said before, I don't know, even if Gonzalez comes back and performs, even if Yorke or Cook would come up and perform, I still don't know if that provides you with that quote unquote, answer for next season. I mean, obviously I want to see them play as well, but it's not like every single player that's ever been added to the 40 man. I mean, my God, Liover Peguero has been on the 40 man for the past few years here and has barely sniffed the major leagues.
Yeah.
So it's not like that's like a prerequisite to be able to make that decision, and
Yeah.
I still think it's also good to have that depth. If you go into next year and you have Gonzalez, Cook, Yorke, and whoever at that second base with, a couple of those guys also being able to play the outfield positions,
Yeah.
it's not like anybody's really blocking anyone. That's just kind of like the way I'm thinking right now.
There's space for everybody here. And I think Yorke getting run in the corner outfield spots says a lot. I also think Billy Cook, like I know he's listed as an infielder, and I know that he played a decent bit of first base with Norfolk. He really hasn't done that much. I think he played once at first over the weekend, but for the most part, he's been in the outfield, whether it's center or a corner spot, and he looks good too. I think that there is a world where you see all of Gonzalez, Yorke, and Cook in a lineup in the big leagues, and there's really no impeding of anybody. If you slap Cook in center and Yorke is in left and Gonzalez is at second base. I do think, if I were a betting man on Yorke and Cook being added to the 40-man roster, I honestly think it's a no-brainer that you add both to the 40-man, because they feel like two guys that would go in a heartbeat in the Rule 5 draft. Like, they would go so quickly. And the Pirates, I wouldn't consider this a loss per se, but they probably felt having Blake Sable taken away from them in the Rule 5 draft, not this past offseason, but the offseason before that, because they ran into some catching issues, right? And they totally ran into catching issues this year. Now, Joey Bart has been a saving grace, but if they had Sable still and they had him 40-man protected, I mean, Sable would be a hell of a backup catcher to Joey Bart right now. And, Bart, Sable, they came both from San Francisco. So I do think that they are going to protect both, and they're going to give both a shot to make the team out of camp next year. I would probably think that at least one of them would get an audition this year.
Yeah, I mean, and you do have, it's definitely different than it's been, in previous years when people start to think about stuff. They think about the old, September call-ups. It used to be,
Right.
You'd see everybody play. Or at least be on the bench. And now it's like, you adding two guys, and especially with the Pirates, pitching injuries, different stuff like that.
Yeah.
One of those is obviously, a pitcher. I definitely think that, like you said, somebody's going to get that little bit of an audition at some point in time. But we talk about, you're talking about the catching position here, which I know as soon as, a guy from Indianapolis, the Indians, mentions a catcher, they're going to mention, Henry Davis, who has been back down in Indianapolis. I just looked at this morning. Obviously, people see the highlights and see the home runs and stuff. The one thing that I looked at with Henry Davis in AAA that I don't know how much it means, but it's where my eye kind of goes towards at times, because anytime he's been down there, he mashes. Everybody's going to look at the 138 WRC plus, the 525 slugging, the 6 home runs.
Yeah.
I also see a 395 BABIP, the BABIP. Yeah. I see that on there as well. And I know that you're watching him a lot more than most people. Is he like the pool happy? Like, he hits a home run and I'm like, oh, that's going over like as close to the, the foul pole as possible.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, if his approach has changed, if his stance has changed, if anything has changed, or if you're saying, like, can he just mash AAA hitting?
No, I think he tried to get back to what he became the number one overall pick for, and what made him the rocket ship to the minor leagues the first time, which was the natural athleticism and the very strong human being that Henry Davis is. And I think that he's leaned into that athletic move in the box a little bit more. I know he's sunk a little bit deeper into his setup, a lot like what he looked like first time he came up last year. I wouldn't slam the panic button because the BABIP's high. I wouldn't slam the panic button because the pull rate's high. I think this guy's a really good AAA hitter, and I think that at some point it's going to translate to big league hitting. Now the question is it in September? Is it the offseason? I have no idea. The Pirates catching situation is fascinating because you now have several more years of control of Joey Bart because you grabbed that guy for nothing. He was literally DFA'd. And then you've got Indy Rodriguez that's essentially working his way back. And I saw the report Ben Harrington said, it's not entirely out of the question that he could DH in professional baseball games this year. Like, that's crazy. So, okay, you've got Bart and you've got Indy factored into the fold. How does Henry slot in? Does he get another look in the outfield? We'll see. I'd say in terms of offensive profile, like he's doing what he has to do down here in AAA. And I'm not sure if there are other boxes that the Pirates need him to check. And I know that it's kind of a weird one. Checking boxes is like the bugaboo phrase in baseball. But, I'm not sure what those boxes are. And I'm not sure if he's checking them or not. All I know is he's been a really solid AAA hitter, since he's come back and on the year as well. Like, this guy's OPSing, I think, right around 960, 970 on the season at the AAA level. In terms of September call-ups, don't forget Jared Jones is here on rehab. And the definition of September call-up is who are the two guys that are going to expand your roster from 26 to 28? And yeah, that could be a prospect. That's exciting. More often than not, it's not a prospect. More often than not, it's like a Miguel Andujar that you saw last year, right? It's a guy that is going to help you be productive down the stretch. If they can get Jared Jones back into the fold without optioning anybody at the big league level right now, if nobody is deserving of being optioned, then you're just going to do that. And one of your moves in terms of roster expansion and a September call-up is going to be activating a guy off a rehab assignment. I think the other one might be getting Henry a shot, and we'll see what happens here. You want, Grandal to get even more days off. You got Davis catching, and that's that. So I think it's going to be fascinating, man, to see what they do. And if I were to throw two names at you right now in terms of who I expect to be a Pirate on September 1 that's in Indianapolis right now, it'd be Jared Jones and Henry Davis, as boring as that sounds.
Yeah, and for Pirates fans, I mean, you may think of it as boring, but it's two guys that, I mean, and Jones, kind of burst onto the scene and, produced more or added more to the team than you probably ever thought he was going to add this year.
Jones ain't boring. Jones is not boring as a person. I'm just saying the transaction is boring.
The transaction is boring for people. But then also, I mean, like you said, Henry Davis, a guy that you expected to contribute more this year. And I always, with Henry Davis, kind of go back to, when he was called up last year and, he had the least amount of minor league plate appearances by a 1-1 since like 1972 or something. So it wasn't like everybody always complains about. That's one of the boxes they always think they need to check is the number of at-bats. But with him, that honestly just might be the case just because, I mean, he didn't really get that many and was forced into a position he never played before, then worked his butt off this whole offseason to get back to his, original position. So, I mean, with Henry Davis, I mean, I would like to see him. I want to see at-bats from him to see if he can hit in the majors in some ways more than I would like to see it from the other guys. But we do have to get to two other guys on the Indianapolis Indians that, I mean, have just been electric and exciting. I mean, Bubba Chandler, my dear God. The one thing about this is that even before this season, talked about him having possibly one of the best fastballs in the Pirates organization, if not the best fastball by, movement and also velocity and stuff like that. Yeah. But he's got secondary stuff as well. That is just absolutely scary. I mean, scary, it is. So talk to me a little bit about Bubba.
I need him to explain to me the right playbooks to use in NCAA football 25, because apparently he's really good at that game, which makes sense because he was going to go do both at Clemson. This guy's a freak athlete, and I just did like a 25-minute sit down with him that'll be on the Call Up podcast, plugging another podcast. But we talked a lot about the football background and just kind of how that bleeds into athleticism on the mound, because this guy was going to go play quarterback at Clemson and also do both on the baseball field. So he was in between DJ Uiagalelei and Cade Klubnik. If you're a college football fan at all, he was the recruiting class in between them. DJ was a 20, Klubnik was a 22, Bubba was a 21. He was going to quarterback and he was going to hit and pitch for Clemson. But, the money was right in 2021 in the third round, and he comes and you see that athleticism. I know he's not hitting anymore. I know he's not playing football anymore, but you see that athleticism on the hill. And that athleticism shines in the fastball. And you say it could be one of the best in the Pirate system. That's one of the best in minor league baseball right now. Like that, you can maybe expand that to Major League Baseball too. By shape, by velo, that's one of the best fastballs that we have on the planet right now. Not to mention the breaking stuff that you're mentioning, like a gyro slider. It's a tighter slider, kind of like that slider cutter hybrid, but for the most part, it's that slider that has sharp bite. And that changeup, dude, like that changeup grades out well as well. He can turn his hands both ways. He can supinate with the breaking balls. He can pronate with the changeups, and he rips that fastball. It takes off. It has minimal horizontal movement, which creates that rocket ship type sensation, that rise ball. He throws the closest thing to a rise ball that we have in baseball. And it is unbelievable to watch. I had the night off on Friday. So instead of sitting up in the booth and instead of not going to the ballpark on my off day from work, I decided to go to the ballpark and sit 2 rows behind home and just ooh and ah for 6 innings and 11 Ks from this guy, because he is utterly dominant. And it has been so fun to watch him make his 2 starts in Indy. But I mean, I sat 2 rows behind home in Bradenton for the spring breakout game. I sat, a couple rows behind home at the Futures game in Arlington in July. I love that vintage of Bubba. And if you can do that at PNC when he eventually gets there, I have no idea when it is. So I prefer if you didn't ask me that. But no, I mean, like if you have the opportunity to sit behind home at PNC Park to watch this guy's fastball, just do it, because it's different than any other sensation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's electric. It's so much fun to watch. The other guy is Thomas Harrington. And I mean, Harrington has been, one of my favorite pitching prospects for the Pirates since they drafted him. And it's just because I kind of feel like, and I've said this before, that he came in as a pitcher. He's always been a pitcher. I always say there's pitchers and there's throwers. Throwers have to become pitchers. And it feels like Thomas Harrington, with his control, with the, the toolbox that he has, the number of pitches that he has, the way he can locate them. I mean, it's almost like Thomas Harrington, when he arrived at Campbell, he was a pitcher and he's always been a pitcher. So talk to me a little bit about Harrington.
Yeah. So Harrington apparently got to Campbell at 160 pounds and like just continued to kind of level up. So if you're a D1 pitcher and you're going to Campbell, which is like, don't get it twisted. You may not know about Campbell University in North Carolina. That's one of the better mid-major baseball programs in America. His teammate was Zach Neto, who's the shortstop for the LA Angels. They've produced guys that are drafted consistently over the last decade. The fact that Harrington got there at a $160 and throwing in the high 80s is a testament to who he is as a pitch mix guy and as a pitcher, like you're saying. So like he is, I don't want to use the word throwback because I feel like throwback is almost an insult now because it's, he doesn't throw it. No, he throws 92, 93. He can run it up to 94. Now, is that league average in the major league level? Yes, it is. So he's going to be, below average. He'll sit below league average when it comes to fastball velocity at the major league level, but he attacks at a low height and he gets good carry on that fastball. So he gets that Joe Ryan sensation, or like the 2 young guys that you see in Seattle right now, Brian Wu, Bryce Miller, like they kind of throw that rising fastball, it seems, with the low release, high carry. But like the kitchen sink approach, dude, like when he's got all of them working, he is slicing and dicing. And his start on Saturday, 7 shutout on 63 pitches. 63 pitches, 50 strikes. He faced 22 hitters. 2 of them had 2-ball counts. 1 of them worked a 3-ball count. 2 guys got to a 2-ball count out of 22 hitters that he saw. I couldn't believe that.
It's crazy, and it's amazing to watch it. And the thing is at times he's not that, blow him away. Because I think in that game he only had a couple strikeouts, but no walks. And that's like been his calling card is you don't put guys on base. And that's where, like, with me, with the minor league, I mean, especially, the minor leagues, because I do it at the major league levels as well. But I look at that whip and, both him and Bubba are like, they are throwing like reliever numbers at whip.
Yeah.
0.865 for Harrington, 0.769 for Bubba. Yeah. I mean, to me, that's not just elite starter whip. That is like elite relief pitcher whip. And they're doing it at the highest level in the minors. It's just been great to watch.
They're not beating themselves, and they operate with no fear. Like, that's the biggest thing. You operate with fear, you're going to get burned. And, I can't speak for those guys when they get to the next level eventually, but it seems like they've made the jump to AAA, and Harrington is going to stay true to himself. And Harrington, has run into some really hard contact, and he got hit hard in his first 2 starts. But, the fact is, like, Harrington is not going to deviate from who he is, from what has made him a borderline top 100 prospect in baseball, what has made him part of the Pirates situation moving forward. And he's going to be a strike thrower. He's going to work around the perimeter of the zone with a multitude of pitches, and he's going to pitch his game. And if you beat him, okay, but he's going to flip the page and be ready for the next one. I don't know who's going to beat Bubba. Like, I have no idea. We'll see what happens. Like, it might be the Houston Astros at some point in 2025. We'll see. But like, I have yet to see this guy get beaten. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. And honestly, the same way as Skeens. Like, I have yet to see Skeens get beaten. And you could say that the Dodgers beat him. Did they? It wasn't a mutilation by any stretch. It was a shaky start by his standards. But, if you had Jared Jones run out there and give you that start against the LA Dodgers, or Mitch Keller give you that start against the LA Dodgers, you're like, yeah, it was fine. Like, yeah, that's the thing. I'm just not sure who's going to beat him.
Yeah, it definitely, man. And it's been great talking to you again here. Every single time we talk, we just have a good baseball conversation, and absolutely plug your own stuff. The call up pod that you do over at Just Baseball Media is awesome. It's definitely on my playlist on my Apple playlist. Also, for you guys that don't, once again, go follow Jack McMullen at Jack_McMullen11. Follow the at Indy Indians. Follow at Just Baseball _Media. Follow everything there, man, because Just Baseball Media is growing. It's doing great stuff over there. Jack, this is always such a good time, man. I can't wait to do it again, brother.
No, appreciate you, man. This has been great.
Gonna do a quick top 5 Pirates prospects because, we, Jack McMullen, the guest that just hopped off there, is touched on a decent amount of the guys that could have been chosen to be one of the top 5 Pirates prospects since I've done this, a couple weeks ago now. Number 1, I mean, I mentioned, Bubba Chandler. Just saying this, he's got 13 innings pitched, 2 starts. I talked about the whip, the 0.769 whip, only 7 hits, 17 Ks, 3 base on balls, 0 runs. As Jack mentioned, Thomas Harrington did get hit pretty hard in his first couple of starts. Talked about his last performance, the 63 pitches, absolutely ridiculous. His total numbers, 17 and a third, the 0.865 whip I spoke of, only 11 Ks, but only 3 walks, good for a 3.63 ERA. So those are the two guys right there. Always these are in no particular order, but that is 1 and 2. Number 3, I got to put my boy from West Virginia. West Virginia drafted in the 4th round last year, 2023, Carlson Reed. We talk about promotions. A lot of people may have missed that he was promoted from Bradenton to Greensboro, has made 3 starts for the Grasshoppers so far, 12 2/3 innings pitched, a 1.184 whip, a 0.71 ERA, 13 strikeouts, does have the 6 walks, but in Greensboro, one of the things I look at, because I've talked about this before, Greensboro's ballpark is small, but there are a lot of other small ballparks around the Sally League. 0 home runs, only 1 earned run. Carlson Reed trying to figure out if this is for real or not. The 4th player, Johnny Severino, spoke about him with Eric Birdland, Eric Garfield at Eric Birdland, with his time in the FCL, has continued to produce up in Bradenton. Small sample size, only 63 plate appearances, 2 home runs, a 281 average, an 858 OPS, 3 stolen bases, 3 triples, 2 triples, 3 doubles. Johnny Severino continues to hit. And then I'm going to go with Termarr Johnson here just because he did hit a no-doubt home run yesterday. The day we're recording here is on Monday. The video will come out on Monday. Audio will come out on Tuesday if you're listening to this. Termarr Johnson, I looked at this. Since June 1st, 260 plate appearances. The 260 average, a lot of people are going to look, what is he going to be? Is he going to be an average hitter? Going to be a power hitter? I think he's turning a little bit more into that power hitter again, but not like crazy power numbers. The 367 on base percentage, really like to see 420 on the slugging. So he does have that power. The K rate staying up over 20. It's just barely 20.4, but has that base on balls. For the season, it's 16.2. In that time I'm talking about, since June 1st, it's 13.5. The guy still walks. 127 WRC plus, and that's in that small stretch. It's like a 128 for the season. So he is still hitting very well. And sorry, it's a 121 for the season. So, he's hitting well, maybe not as well as everyone would want him to, hit, but has been hitting for more power since June. 9 home runs, 12 home runs on the season, as I mentioned. Still extremely young. I know that a lot of people are saying he should have started in Altoona this year. He will be up in Altoona, I believe, to start the season next year. May get a little bit of, a cup of coffee here in the last few weeks. Don't really think if he doesn't that he wouldn't, start there next year. So those are the top 5 Pirates prospects for the last couple of weeks here. And for everybody that listens to this show, what's next. Still on the Myrtle Beach kick here because I did sample a decent amount of drinks when I was down there with my brother-in-law, Josh. We were the beer drinkers. The girls were the seltzers and the Topo Chicos and Palomas and whatever they were drinking, the high noons. So we went to a Myrtle Beach Pelicans game. They're the ones there. They have one of those baseball bats. So me and my brother-in-law, we drank the Golden Road Brewing Mango Cart Wheat Ale, coming in at 4%. Tasted great out of the baseball bat. Give that one a 400. Knock that up to 425. The next day, we got up and we golfed 18 holes. my first time golfing in like 12 or 13 years. Have been golfing since then, so maybe the bug is back. We got something from the cart, the little lady that drives around in the cart, the Sweetwater IPA. I believe I have reviewed this beer before, but it tastes so sweet when you're on the back nine at Myrtle Beach. It was hot, it was humid. Uh, Sweetwater IPA coming in at 6.3%. This one, the IPAs usually go down, but if you're doing it on the golf course, this one is going up. I give that one a 425, knock it up to 475. It was a great beer for that time. We went out to dinner. We went to this place called Neil and Pam's that has like fried bologna as one of their specialties. It took me back to my childhood. One of my pap's favorite sandwiches growing up was a fried bologna sandwich. But I had New South Brewing. I had two of their beers. I had the Dirty Myrtle, which is their double IPA coming in at 8.9%, and the Little Dirty. It is their American pale ale coming in at 5%. The Dirty Myrtle is dangerous because it does not taste or feel like a double IPA 8.9%. I will give that one a 475, knock it down to 450. The Little Dirty, I give that one a 500, knock that down to 450. Those are two great beers if you're ever down there. Once again, New South Brewing. Then the couples, my wife and I, my brother-in-law Josh, my sister-in-law Stephanie, we went out and had a nice dinner at Clark's. It's in North Myrtle. It was a little bit of a drive. Had a couple really good beers up there. Fam's Brewing Company from Charleston, South Carolina. I had the Finito Mexican Lager coming in at 4.8%. Give that one a 425, knock it down to 400 on the weighted based on batting average scale. And then Old Hickory Brewing from Hickory, North Carolina. The Ruby Lager, a red lager, coming in at 4%. Give that one a 450, knock it down to 425. I think I only have, if I put them all together here, I'll have one more day of the drinks from Myrtle Beach. But until next time, everybody, let's go Indians. Let's go Curve. Let's go Hoppers. And let's go Bradenton Marauders.